Every day, hundreds of people disappear around the world. Some come back on their own, some are found by police or private detectives. In some cases, the mystery of the disappearance is solved months or years later. But there are cases where people disappear under very mysterious circumstances, and the mystery of their disappearance still remains unsolved. But the most mysterious are certainly the mass disappearances of people. On Christmas Eve 1945, in the town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, the Saunders family was sleeping soundly when suddenly their house caught fire. The 10 children upstairs were trapped. Unfortunately, the fire managed to take the lives of 5 of them before firefighters arrived on the scene and extinguished the flames. At least, that's how the fire chief described what happened, even though no bodies, or at least no bones, were found at the scene. This prompted George and Jenny Saunders to declare that their children might still be alive. Yes, the lack of bones was weird as hell, but there had to be a rational explanation. But there are other odd details, too. When George Sawyer attempted to roll the pickup up to the house in hopes of climbing onto the roof of the car and reaching up to the blazing bright second floor, its engine would not start. The family couldn't get through to the fire department in time because their phone line wasn't working. Apparently, it had been cut. In light of the strange circumstances of the tragedy, the Saunders recalled that a few days before the fire, 2 suspicious men had visited their home and made it clear that they were going to burn down their house and kill their children. One of them, who introduced himself as an insurance agent, even told George, an Italian immigrant, that he would pay for criticizing Mussolini. Definitely a suspicious situation, but one that does not compare with the fact that later, the same insurance agent served as a juror on the jury, under the coroner's office, which considered the house fire to be an accident. Soon other people claimed to have seen a man near the house, with a set of tools in his hands, which hypothetically could have been used to break down the car. Also, on their lawn, they found an incomprehensible rubber object that George claimed was a napalm bomb. Moreover, a waitress working at a roadside diner and a Charleston hotel employee later claimed to have seen 4 of the 5 missing children with a group of Italian men and women who forbade them to talk to anyone. Unfortunately, their testimony went nowhere. Neither did the photograph Jenny Saunders received in the mail 20 years later, supposedly showing one of her missing sons. Croton is perhaps the most famous mass disappearance in history. In 1584, by decree of Queen Elizabeth I, it was decided to establish a colony in North America. And in 1587, 3 ships carrying 150 would-be settlers, including women and children, landed on Roanoke Island in what is now North Carolina. Once settled, the settlers discovered a distinct lack of tools, food, and other necessities of life. John White, who led the expedition, agreed to return to England for the necessary equipment for the colonists and left the island a week later. He was able to return to Roanoke only 4 years later. The island was deserted. White found only the words Croton carved into a tree. Before leaving the island, John White arranged with the colonists that if they had to leave Roanoke, they would leave a prominent sign telling them where they had gone. If they were in danger or had to leave the island to escape, they would additionally carve a cross in the tree below the name of the colony's new location. There was no cross under the carved inscription. This could only mean one thing. The settlers left the island of their own free will. Croton is an island 80 kilometers to the south and inhabited by Indians. White wanted to sail there immediately, but the weather turned bad. But that does not mean that the settlers were abandoned to their fate. Later, British ships repeatedly visited Roanoke Island and explored the surrounding islands as well as lands on the mainland, trying to find traces of the colonists. But they could find nothing. Not even a drop of blood, strands of hair, or scraps of torn clothing were found. The surrounding woods were thoroughly searched for fresh graves, but not a single body was found. The local Croton Indian tribe treated the whites well, but their village on a neighboring island was also searched just in case. This yielded no results. Eventually, a dispatch was sent to the Queen. They couldn't have just disappeared without even a trace left. They were taken by the devil. Any war is a place of terrible events. But even in warfare, there are incidents that are inexplicable from any point of view. Such is the story of a unit of the Norfolk Regiment of the British Army. In early August 1915, during World War I, the Norfolk Regiment joined the landing party. The general line of attack rested on the village of Anafarta. The problem for the British was not only a poor supply of ammunition and food, but also a lack of drinking water. Finding that the Turks' defenses were less strong toward Hill 60, Lieutenant General Hamilton decided to strike there. Battalion 1-5 of the Norfolk Regiment, commanded by Colonel Bosch, set out to accomplish the task. Taking advantage of the folds in the terrain, the 267-man detachment entered the ravine and then disappeared into a cloud of strange mist. At the top of Hill 60, the detachment did not appear. And when the fog cleared, it turned out that the ravine was completely empty. Lieutenant General Hamilton made a detailed report to the Secretary of War on this event. It indicated that the battalion of 1-5 included proven soldiers, and only those who were thirsty to the point of exhaustion or wounded returned to camp before morning. And the best part of the battalion, 250 men, 16 officers, and Colonel Beecham, who led them, disappeared without a trace into the fatal sensation. After the war ended and the missing fighters began to be searched for, the careful British conducted a thorough investigation, which yielded no results. The Turkish officers questioned claimed that only 35 British men were captured on August 12, 1915. Among the British, only one soldier of the Norfolk Regiment was captured, and the Turks had no idea about the rest. The Mary Celeste was a brigantine about 31 meters long, built in Scotland in 1862. On November 5, 1872, under the command of Captain Benjamin Briggs, age 37, the ship left the port of New York with a cargo of liquor and headed for Italy. On the vessel, besides the captain and a crew of 7, were the captain's wife and his 2-year-old daughter. The Mary Celeste was discovered 4 weeks later on December 4th by the brig de Grazia, commanded by Captain David Reed Morehouse, who personally knew Benjamin Briggs. The ship was abandoned by her crew. Not a single person, alive or dead, was aboard. Between the bulkheads and decks of the discovered vessel, there was seawater. Its level in the hold reached 1 meter. The hatch covers had been removed, and the hinges of the forehatch had been loosened and were lying on the deck. Otherwise, the vessel appeared undamaged. The windows of the aft superstructure, where the captain's cabin was located, were covered with tarpaulin and boarded up. The compass was destroyed, presumably in an unsuccessful attempt to remove it in a hurry. In the captain's cabin, the jewelry box and 2 bundles of money remained intact. The arrangement of the belongings indicated that the ship had not been caught in a major storm. The sewing machine, in particular, had an oil can, which would certainly have fallen off in a violent rocking storm. All the papers were gone. The discovery of the ship generated a lot of speculation and rumors. They discussed the possibility of mutiny, an attack by pirates, the impact of the Bermuda Triangle, and even interference from aliens from outer space. But all these theories were shattered by the strange circumstances described above in which the disappearance of the crew occurred. The Flannan Islands are a small group of islands off the coast of Scotland, located right on an important sea route. And so, naturally, a lighthouse was built there so that Scottish ships could navigate the choppy waters of the North Atlantic intact. The work of the lighthouse was maintained by 3 men. At the time of December 1900, they were Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur. All 3 were to spend 14 days on the island. Unfortunately for the trio, however, none of them had been seen alive again since landing on the island. A few days later, a violent storm struck the islands. Ships passing by noticed that the lighthouse lights were out. Soon a rescue team arrived at the locked lighthouse, finding only beds made, untouched dinner on the table, and not a soul around. The captain of the rescue boat quickly concluded that all 3 men had been caught in the aforementioned storm and drowned. However, his theory collapsed about the raincoat left at the lighthouse and the logbook in which the notes were taken, even after the weather cleared. The current theory is that the missing men were carried away by a wandering wave. However, it builds on the idea that all three keepers stubbornly ignored the established rules against leaving the lighthouse unattended, no matter what. There was no way Marshal Duca and MacArthur could have left the lighthouse together. And why would they have locked the lighthouse doors behind them? If you liked the story, don't forget to like it. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and write what you think about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important to me.